Hello, I'm Enrique from the Creator team, and today we are gonna be kicking off the 13.10 milestone for the rich text editor component. So this is the first the first milestone that we are gonna be doing development work for the rich text editor, and we are going to be focused on two aspects. The first one is that the rich text editor, the first product that is going to be using the components, is the wikis. So before starting to integrate the editor into the wiki, we are going to be migrating the wiki edit page to view. Our second goal is going to be creating an scaffold for the rich text editor. By scaffolding, I mean setting up a strategy for testing the features in the editor, creating all of the directory structure and all of the basic organization that we're going to follow to develop the editor. And that also includes some development guidelines. The goal of this agenda is first we gonna be the editor team is trying um, to make milestone work more collaborative, not creating having like each engineer working on isolation for each deliverable that we want to work on. So Himanshu and we are gonna be working together on delivering these two goals for the milestone. And we want to talk about what is our preferred way of collaborating across the following weeks, and also to define the structure of what we are gonna be delivering on this one. So yeah, those are the goals. I think that one that is very important is sharing, creating a shared understanding of what we want to accomplish. Like we have two high level goals, but we actually have to define what is the scope of what we are going to be delivering, and if we actually can deliver those goals within a single milestone. Besides that, we're gonna be perhaps like taking those big high level goals and breaking it down into smaller implementation issues, and also setting DRIs. So yeah, let's start with the general conversation of how we can collaborate over the coming weeks. I was discussing with Roman, or actually asking him for advice on how we can, set the collaboration, because we are not going to be doing implementation work together for both the wiki migration and the rich text editor scaffolding. So I was wondering how we could be on the same page on both areas. He told me that perhaps one thing that we could do is like having a catch-up meeting every week, perhaps at the start of the week, and we can spend 10 or 15 minutes sharing knowledge of how we are doing. That's one idea. So what do you think, Himanshu? What else could we do to catch up and be on the same page?
Yeah, so one way to do it is like we can maybe pair program on both the things, but I would say let's uh, let's start working on let's both of us start working on one of the issues. So let's say, for example, I work on migration to view and you work on the scaffolding, so that uh, when we go to pair programming sessions, it like we don't waste a lot of time in setup and everything. So usually what happens is that when you do pair programming and you're starting from scratch, you like a lot of the time is wasted in having back and forth conversation. So So let's do some work on our own, and then we can next week we can sync up on what each other is working on.
Okay.
So we can sync up, and we can also do a pair programming session next week. Yes. And meanwhile, we can also tag each other as reviewers on our merge requests. So instead of sending it across to like whatever GitLab bot suggests, I think we should like it doesn't apply to only to the work we are doing. It applies to like all the teamwork. I think there should be at least one other person in the team looking at the work, and we should not just be getting the work reviewed by whatever GitLab bot suggests. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be like we rely on each other for review, but we also like involve a third person in the team from the team. But that would
Yes,
be for
of
the
course.
okay, that would be like for the second round of review, or perhaps just like picking some random merge requests and assigning them to another team member.
Sí, pero no me escuchan. Ya he hablado.
Oh, give me
No,
a
it's
moment.
mostly for us. I would say I think it's okay if you get it reviewed from anyone, just tag the other person in the same merge request so that they're up to date on what's happening there. So it's not necessary to get your MR code reviewed by teammates, but it's helpful if you're working together, you should tag them in the merge request. In our case, it will be like in us involving each other, and yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so I guess what we can do then is if we're gonna have a catch up meeting, we could set up something weekly, perhaps at this time, right? At the
Yeah,
start of the week.
this time Monday, yes, works for me.
Sounds good. How do we schedule the pairing sessions? Perhaps that's something that can be um, more that it can happen more organically, and we can come up with a pair session during the rest of the week, right? It doesn't have to be like something that should happen uh, at the same time every week.
Yes, we can plan the pairing session in the meeting itself. So I mean, we can come up with a time to pair program for the week in the meeting.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, we can also it is come discuss on Slack and then set up a meeting for pair programming.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I think that that's a great plan. So let's stick with that. Okay, so let's jump uh, to the next topic, and it's the rich text editor scaffolding. So I was thinking that a good place to start is to have a quick overview of the technical design document. I don't know, Himanshu, have you looked at that document so far?
Yeah, I have looked at it briefly, but yeah, I do understand uh, most of it.
Amazing. So do you have like any remarks or questions about it?
I think the questions would. I mean, the document looks good. The questions would come more as we go on and implement this one by one. So right now, like, I don't really have any questions, but uh, when we get to implementing it, I think it will become more clear, and maybe probably face some challenges or something.
Sounds good. Chad, do you have like I don't know if it could be useful for to go through the technical document, or I mean, since Himanshu already look at it, we could like go straight to the other topics. What do you think?
Yeah, there is one question though about TipTap version 2. So, like, are they planning on changing something very significant that could could possibly make us want to make us rewrite this thing, uh, or is it something that we can migrate easily?
That's a great question. So you're talking about this section here, where I wrote a little bit about the uh, development of Tiptop 2. So to provide a little bit more of context, we're going to start the development of the editor using Tiptop 1. But currently, the Tiptop team is working on a major version that is going to contain significant changes. So my based on their blog post and I've been reading the documentation of the new Tiptop. The changes, what is gonna change that is like very significant is the way that extensions are defined. So go. I'm gonna show you what what I mean by that, like the changes in the extension API. So this is the repository of the next GitLab version. I'm gonna open side by side the current version, that is the version 1. So I'm gonna open an extension here. Let's open the Bold extension. That is a very easy one. I'm gonna open the Bold extension here. So one of the first differences that is very noticeable is that extension will like the way that packages are handled is that in Tiptop version 1 there was a single npm package that contained all of the extensions. Now in the Tiptop v2, each extension will be an independent npm package. So that will make that will be a difference, because we're going to have to migrate all of the dependencies installed on the package JSON in GitLab UI from one package to multiple ones. The second big difference is that the way that extensions are created. So if we go to the version 1, they use a syntax of JavaScript classes, and they use class inheritance to inherit from a common mark class. And then each field contains, for example, is a computed property for the extension name, and then the prose mirror schema that represents that content type, and other types of features like the the shortcut keys for setting a text as bold, and the comments and the input rules to to write like markdown style code for bold and converting that text into bold in the editor. So what changes in version 2 is that they don't use inheritance anymore. They use this mark.create method. This is written in TypeScript. That's the reason that we can see generics and all of that, but that shouldn't affect us because that's at the entrance pile of the JavaScript. But they don't use inheritance anymore. They don't use computed properties anymore. But if you notice, they are using the same schema syntax, and they are using also basically like the same content within those methods. It's very similar to the V1 extensions. The only thing that changes is the way that the extension is defined, the extension API. So if we decide to create a custom bold extension, we're gonna have to change this syntax.
Yeah. So a couple of questions here. So if as long as we are relying on their existing extensions, I think we will need to create a couple of our own extensions as well. So that is actually maybe a little bit of problem. So how stable is their version 2 right now? So can we like if we, for example, we are planning on releasing rich text editor for wikis, and we know that wikis are not very prominent right now, and we can do it behind a feature flag anyway. So given that Tiptop would release this in the next 3 or 4 releases months, and given that our rich text editor would also go live behind a feature flag, so is it safe to use the next version directly here?
Right now, the version, the current version that they have released is well, first, this repository is not even public. So I have they gave me private access to their private repository where they are implementing the Tiptop feature. So they have published some npm packages of all of these extensions, but it's not official. So we don't even have like actual access to the new Tiptop packages to scaffold the project. What they say based on their roadmap is that it's gonna be available by the end of this month. But I think that is also very unlikely considering the what I've seen in the development of the package. But I think that based on the blog post that they published, they are gonna provide a migration guide, and we are gonna implement extensions. But I think that they force to migrate an extension from V1 to V2 is not going to be uh, it's not going to represent like well, it's gonna be a significant effort, but I think that is I consider that a safe decision to start with V1 and then migrate and schedule with Eric some effort to migrate from V1 to V2. Like considering that all of the body of the extension is the same, perhaps it's safe to just start with V1. And it's gonna allow us to make progress.
Yeah, and also second thing is like are they actually offering any advantages in the version 2 that would be useful to us? Otherwise, I don't think it should be a very high priority to migrate as soon as V2 is released. So I think we can do it much later on when it's much more stable.
Yeah, I completely agree. So it's I think that we should wait until they have like a stable version and then migrate. But the biggest advantage that I see in version 2.0 is that they have a really big test coverage for the library. In version V1, they are lacking this test coverage, and it's more likely to have like an unstable version of the library. But now they are implementing this 100% test coverage suite that will give us more confidence about the quality of the product. And they are implementing also the editor using TypeScript. So type safety is also another layer of confidence. Besides that, they've made the editor view framework agnostic. So Tiptop V1 works by default with Vue. But Tiptop V2 is going to be framework agnostic, and you can use it with React or other frameworks. So the architecture is more decoupled from frameworks. It gives us more flexibility as a result.
Okay. I think it makes sense because since V2 is not even public, so it's out of the question for us to use V2 right now. So we don't really have a choice here. So yeah, I think it's okay for us to go with V1. I think, yeah, so we can move forward in the plan now. Yeah, that's about it. I don't really have any other questions.
Sounds good. Thank you, Himanshu. So about the scaffolding requirements for the editor, I made a list here of what we would have to do. Like adding the dependencies to GitLab UI, creating the component directory, and setting up the storybook for the rich text editor. Overall, like the organizational structure and all of that. Finally, it is worth mentioning here that Eric has been working on creating the issue structure for how we are gonna organize work in the editor. I'm gonna share the issue link in the agenda. So you have to look here because I uploaded the link. Eric created this epic where we are gonna organize all of the different issues for implementing the GitLab flavor Markdown extensions. So it's worth looking at the discussion in there.
Okay.
Of these topics here for the scaffolding, I like to highlight that the part of the testing for extensions and integration tests. So these testing Tiptop and the custom extensions is not going to be as easy as testing Vue because we don't have like utilities like the Vue testing utils to mock components and have a good interface. So what I was thinking is that we're going to be implementing extensions that read that knows how to parse the HTML produced by the Markdown endpoint. So I was thinking that we should find a way of generating fixtures from that API. Like, let me go to the design document for a recap of that and provide context. So from a general point of view, we are like when the editor initializes, let's say that the user tries to edit an existing wiki page. By default, Tiptop won't know how to render the markdown that is well, by default, Tiptop doesn't know how to render markdown or interpret markdown. So what we do is that we send that markdown to the GitLab Markdown API, and that the GitLab Markdown API will produce HTML that is like the rendered version of that markdown, and then we are gonna feed the editor with that HTML and display the content. So I was thinking about testing that we should find a way of generating fixtures and make that automatic, like taking a piece of bold text in Markdown, sending it to a GitLab Markdown API, and getting the HTML output as a result, and then using those features to write tests. In that way, if at some point the GitLab Markdown API changes the way that it renders some content, we are gonna the tests are going to catch it, because we are relying on an automatic generation of pictures for it. What do you think?
I think it sounds good. For fixtures, we can use our integration test suite. I don't know how we can. I think we can use the same kind of fixtures for front-end tests also, but the integration tests offer a better mocking of API calls. Like you can like if you want to interact much with backend, but if the component is front-end only, I think we can do it on as a unit test level itself. But the main question is, will the regex editor even work with Jest? Because it was quite a struggle to make Monaco editor work with Jest, and still you cannot really reliably test a lot of things with Monaco. I mean, you can just test that the value in Monaco editor is something, and after doing something else happens, but you cannot really test things like in detail, like is the syntax highlighting working correctly or not. Yeah.
So that may be the case, but to Enrique's original point, I think what you're proposing is a really good idea, especially if we're not able to have as robust unit testing, because that you can, or especially if you don't have as robust of integration testing, because what you're talking about is actually hitting the API, generating some fixtures, and saving them. That's like a VCR-like approach that you use in Ruby. And I can see an automated test or a scheduled job in the CI suite that does that, like on a daily basis or whatever, and then commits those fixtures to the repo. And this is what I was talking about before, to have a golden master or characterization type test where we have the exact current canonical example of how the GitLab flavored Markdown behaves, and we have to make ours behave exactly like that all the time. And this sounds like a good approach. And so
Yeah,
even if we don't, even if we can't test Monaco directly, if we unit test the output of the plugins, then that should be a pretty good level of confidence that the editor is actually rendering what we tell it to do, as long as the infrastructure works.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Like we cannot run in GitLab UI like capybara specs that will exercise the API and will generate that output. But we can create a CI job that connects to the GitLab API and create those static pictures that at some point the rich text editor will consume in the jest test.
Yeah, and I wouldn't use Capybara for that anyway. Like, there's no reason to have the browser involved. That would just make it flaky and unreliable. Just have a job that all it does is hit the API and do it. You can have a little, retry logic around it. We already have code we can steal like that in the www repo, actually. Because sometimes the API flakes out, but you just try it with like a progressive back off, and it could be reliable enough.
Yeah, doing this in the UI repo is kind of a little bit tricky. But in GitLab, at least there is, yeah, you can easily create fixtures. So GitLab test repository is the repository that's used for testing by default. Integration tests. So.
And when you get around to this, Enrique and Himanshu, I'd definitely ping me. I'd be interested in helping set that up. I can
Amazing. Thank
definitely
you, Chad.
imagine how it would look like, and the CI and schedules and all that stuff too. Yeah, because the main point is this has to exactly match what the backend does all the time. That's the most important thing. We need to make that process as reliable and automated as possible.
That's right. Okay. So a point that I think that I forgot to add. Let me add it here. Is that I'm thinking about creating individual issues for each of these scaffolding requirements on GitLab UI. So the idea is that if at some point during the milestone we want to switch and say, hey, I'm gonna start creating the editor structure in the history book, and I want to switch to do some migration work in the wiki. We can also do that. Now the deliverable is like very big in scope, and I think that we have to actually do something like break it down in more manageable bits. Another point is about starting the development and users guidelines implementation. So I have a question. Where should we put this documentation? This is probably a question that needs some context. But now GitLab UI, each component in GitLab UI has its own set of documentation when you open a storybook. So if you go here to a component, perhaps like trying to look for a component with actual documentation.
I think we can put it here in one of the folders. Create a new folder and create a documentation, like a rich text editor folder, and then the folder, the component itself, and all the things that properties that it supports.
But then we have Monaco that has its documentation in the GitLab development apps. So that's why where my question comes from. Like what I like about having it in GitLab in GitLab.
Monaco doesn't have a component, so that is why it does not. That is why it has documentation in here. So I'm not sure, like, can the rich text editor be used outside of its component usage? Like, do we also need to like typically a component is just some markup, and you can pass some attributes to it. But this text editor is probably going to be a little bit of more work than that. So we need to like we offer configurability and how to develop extensions and all those things. I think those should go in this documentation here, in the front end guidelines, how to develop extensions, how to like basically create like work on the text editor itself. So yeah, think of it like two things: uh, creating this thing and using this thing. So usage documentation should be in the storybook, and like developing it should be in the documentation.
So component user segmentation should be
In the storybook, yes.
UI storybook. And what is the other type of documentation, like development?
Yeah, development documentation. So that should go in the GitLab developer documentation. So for example, developing component, developing
So the development docs could be like how to write an extension, as you mentioned, right?
yes,
Like
yes,
perhaps how to, what is the way that we are structuring the test and all of that.
yeah. Also, like writing how to write the extension and how to test it and all those guidelines. So it's like how GitLab has two kinds of documentation. It's like one is the end user documentation and one is the developer documentation. So developers are basically someone who is checking out the code and committing in the GitLab repository, but someone who is just using GitLab does not really need to bother about the internal details of GitLab. They just need to know what the interface looks like. So that's what it's going to be here as well. So the interface here is what you see in the storybook.
Yes, the storybook would be like the showcase of the component, what it can do, and how it can be used. That's a great idea. Thank you, Himanshu.
Yeah. So if some other team, let's say CI team, wants to use Regex editor, they can use it, but they don't need to understand how it works internally.
That's right. Something that I would like to keep is like, that both documentations are linked. Anyone who is like trying to look for Visual documentation now knows where to look, and vice versa. Like, you can reach both places from each type of documentation.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so that would be what what we are gonna how we are gonna start with the rich text editor. Do you have Himanshu other points or remarks?
I think that's it. It looks good to me.
Amazing. Okay, so let's jump into the next topic, that is the wiki edit page view migration. So what I think that we should like do here is defining the scope of the migration. I was looking at the code of the wiki page 8 form. I saw that it's implemented with Haml. There is a very old Markdown editor that we are using there, and I guess that the goal is like taking all of that and implementing it in here. So I you have experience with this this part of the application, right, Himanshu?
Yeah, a little bit. It's not actually a lot of code. What I would say is this is going to be very similar to the migration we have done with the snippets. So in snippets also you can have like any kind of file. I think snippets is much more complicated because you can have any kind of file and you can have multiple files as well. But the common part here is that both of them can include a Markdown file and a preview. So a wiki page is just that essentially. And we are going to migrate just the edit page. So we don't, in fact, even we don't really need to migrate the edit page. I mean, the whole page, we can just migrate the edit form first. So by doing that, like putting all the form stuff in the component, uh, like we can go it step by step. We don't really need to worry about the header and the sidebar and the navigation. I mean, the edit page is basically just the form itself. There's nothing else on there, but there is also this right sidebar. You don't really need to focus on that. And also you can like combine it with a little bit of Haml. But yes, I see one question in one of your in the next points. So yeah, we can definitely use an already existing Markdown component.
Yeah, this is like the Markdown field component. I feel that it is used in the merge request and the issue page, right? So I guess we could use a component to replace the old Markdown editor of the wiki.
Yeah, we can. We're actually using, I think the Markdown field component uses a Markdown content editor. So you have all the preview and all that stuff as well already baked in. So we wouldn't really need to do a lot of work here, hopefully. Because essentially on the front end, there's not a lot of stuff that is happening. It's all going to the backend API, which is basically returns the HTML markup for that for the Markdown, and the API call is the same anyway.
Okay. So considering that this is probably the more complex part of the requirement, do you think that we should create?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
I was saying that like the Markdown field of the edit page is the most complex part of the support. Do you think that we should create like smaller issues, like one that is focused on that Markdown field, other that is like focused on the other fields?
No, I think it's okay to have just one issue. It doesn't really make sense to break it down even further. I think it should be straightforward for the most part.
Sounds good.
But maybe we can come up with one or two smaller issues, but I think that will come eventually. We can discuss more about it in the next week's meeting.
Sounds good. So perhaps we have to spend this week getting familiar with the problem before perhaps assigning a weight to it.
Yeah, because there's this file called Wikisjs. It's not a lot of code. It's like 140 lines of code. It does a lot of things like taking care of the form and also the sidebar. So yeah, potentially we could break it down into like if you want to edit the whole wiki page, convert it to view. So you could possibly like do it in maybe in 2 or 3 parts. Like sidebar is one separate issue and the form is separate issue, and the markdown input is a third issue. Like we could potentially come up with these 3 issues, I think.
But that could be in the case that we want to be, if we decide to actually migrate the sidebar, but we are like
I think it
removing
makes
that from
sense
the scope.
because it's a part of the edit page. It's actually very tricky because the sidebar is a part of other pages as well. So nevertheless, I think we can create the issues, but we can decide next later on that whether it makes sense to do it right now or do it later on.
Okay.
So I'll go and add information there.
Okay.
So we can create 3 kinds of wiki form and so just yeah, so that's what we can do.
Great. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that from what I look at the HAML template, the wiki form part, it's very straightforward. And then, but within the form, we have the markdown text area, and that's the complicated part. So breaking down that in 2 parts sounds very logical to me. Great. So I think that answered this question as well about delivering the migration with Strategy, like in multiple merge requests or issues. Uh, what about? Do you think that? Well, you said that you think that this is like something that you estimate that we can achieve within a single milestone, right? Or perhaps we can just create the sub issues and start working on it and start by the markdown text area. And after that, we can see how it fits within the milestone scope, right?
Yeah, I think this week I can work on it. If you want, you can work on this, and I can maybe take the scaffolding issue. But yeah, any of us can work on this, and we can start with the whether markdown field can be used directly, and then work on migrating the form as well.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely it's possible to do it in one. But given there's the other priority as well, we will want to like we don't just have this issue with us, we have the other issue as well. So yeah, considering that, it still should be possible.
focus. Okay. So since we are gonna be focused on, I guess I'm gonna focus on the scaffolding data and you on the wiki migration. What do you think about? Could you create the agents and break down the implementation issue?
Sorry, can you just please repeat? I missed. Yeah.
So do you create the smaller issues for the?
Yeah, I can go ahead and create the smaller issues. No problem.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So. That's great. I'm gonna create the individual issue for the scaffolding requirements as well with GitLab UI.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. So I think that we've covered the agenda now.
Yeah.
Do you have Himanshu any other comments or remarks?
No, I think that's it. And also, I think we are almost at time, so I think it's.
That's right. We are a bit over time.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you, Himanshu. Thank you, Chad. See you later.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. See you.